From playoff finalists with a record-breaking points tally to bottom of the championship with 0 points. How have Sheffield United started this season so badly? Well, it's quite simple really. They've had a catastrophic summer. Terrible decision making from those at the top has already seen them sack their manager, and they're now trying to salvage the season after just 5 games. So where's it gone wrong? Let's find out. I'm Ryan Dilks from the second tier, and this is Sheffield United's Summer from Hell.
But if you close your eyes, does it almost feel like nothing changed at all? And if you close your eyes, does it almost feel like you've been here before? Oh, how I'm beginning to be an optimist about this. How I'm beginning to be an optimist about this. If you close your eyes, does it almost feel like nothing changed at all?
Our story begins at the end of last season. Sheffield United were beaten in the playoff final by Sunderland. It was a bitterly disappointing end to a season where they were fighting for automatic promotion for most of it. Despite that though, the season had to be viewed as a successful one. They bounced back brilliantly after a Premier League season where they won just 16 points, and they won the most points ever in Championship history for a side who weren't promoted. However, despite that, things weren't all well behind the scenes. Sheffield United's owners are a US-based consortium called COH Sports. They had only taken over the club last December after failing to win promotion. It was revealed the Blades were going to be used a new AI-led approach to signing players, something which Chris Wilder was reportedly not so keen on. And those reports seemed to come to fruition because just 25 days after losing in the playoff final, it was announced Chris Wilder had left the club. He said in a statement, "I'm obviously disappointed to be leaving, particularly because we were so close to getting back to the Premier League. I'm a Sheffielder through and through. I love this club and this city, and that feeling will never change. I depart with some cherished memories and feel proud to be talked about in the same manner that special Sheffield United managers are remembered. Leading this team over 300 times will remain an incredible part of my life." It's a bit of news which didn't go down particularly well with Sheffield United fans. After all, Wilder is Sheffield born and bred, and he's essentially at legend status now at the club. So getting rid of him after a record-breaking season was a bit surprising. It was even more surprising though when his successor was revealed. Almost immediately, Ruben Selles was announced to be taken over. He had previously been in charge of Southampton and Reading, however he had last been at Hull City where he was sacked despite keeping them up. In a statement he said, "We need to embrace data and new technologies, but the most important thing is not to forget the football essence." Sacking a manager who had delivered a playoff final and a record-breaking points tally, and replacing him with a manager who had just been sacked at a club who finished 21st the season before. Yeah, you can see why it's a bit strange. However, it was widely accepted that it was very harsh for him to have been sacked at Hull because he ultimately achieved the goal, which was for them to stay up. He also did a fantastic job at Reading prior to that, despite all the turmoil which was going on behind the scenes there. And he also seemed much more accepting of the more data-led approach that the club was now going with. So there was some logic behind it all. So let's have a look at how the transfer window went with this fancy new AI approach. These are the players who all left the club before the season started. You had Vinny Souza, Aylex and Kiefer Moore. Okay, 3 players there who all featured in the top 10 for the most minutes played at Sheffield United the season before. Essentially, their spine. I mean, Souza and Aylex were massive for them last season. Interesting. It's fine though, as long as they replace them. So who did the AI suggest? So it seems AI is just suggesting players from Bulgaria and players Ruben Selles worked with previously. Tyler Binden he worked with at Reading, Louis Barry who worked with at Hull. I thought this was meant to be this revolutionary new approach. So not exactly the big recruitment drive that was expected. Sheffield United lost big players and didn't really replace them. meaning they headed into the first game of the season not in the greatest of positions. And that proved to be very evident. They were beaten 4-1 at home by Bristol City, ironically the team they had beaten 6-0 over 2 legs in the playoff semi-finals just 3 months prior. Sheffield United were in absolute shambles at the back, mainly because they had Reece Norrington-Davies, a left-back who had started just 4 league games in 2 years, playing at centre-half. He and the debuting Tyler Bindon had really poor games. The absence of Arnel Agbert-Hodzic was particularly evident in this game. However, Ruben Selles didn't help himself when after the game he gave a Phil Brown style team talk on the pitch to his players. It's a move which managers sometimes do to publicly show they're not happy with a performance. Doing it after one game though isn't a great look. So a bad debut for Ruben Selles, but now onto the second league game of the season, away at Swansea City. Sheffield United were in absolute shambles at the back last time out, so they had to improve there, and they did, to be fair to them. But instead, they were shocking going forwards. Throughout the entire game, Sheffield United never really came close to scoring because they didn't manage a single shot on target. Throughout the entirety of last season, they only had one game where they didn't manage a shot on target. That was away at eventual champions Leeds. So it was a bad start with 3 losses from 3 games if you include the League Cup in that as well. It was clear Ruben Selles needed some help, and he got that in the form of a couple of new additions. 2 centre-backs came in. It included Niels Zatterstrom from Malmo for £3 million and Ben Godfrey on loan from Atalanta. Did they help? Not really, because in Sheffield United's next league game, they lost at home to Millwall in a 1-0 defeat. Performance-wise, it was somewhat better, but try telling that to the Sheffield United fans who gave loud boos at half-time and full-time in this one. It was around this time that the club were clearly starting to get a bit tetchy because they knew this wasn't going to plan. And this was perfectly summed up by a classic example of panic buying. With less than a week left of the transfer window, Sheffield United spent £7.5 million on Millwall centre-back Japhet Tanganga, around £3 million on Luton midfielder Taif Chong, and also got in Danny Ings on a free transfer. I'm starting to get the sense the AI-led approach to transfers has gone out the window at this stage. So the next game was away at league leaders Middlesbrough, another tough game. But was this perhaps the moment that everything finally changed for Ruben Selles and he got things on track? I think this video sums it up perfectly. Yep, Sheffield United were comfortably beaten 1-0. It was the second away game in a row where they failed to manage a single shot on target and had now gone more than 5.5 hours of league football where they failed to score a goal. Fortunately for Ruben Selles, there was now an international break, but speculation over his future was rife, and it was totally understandable. 5 games played in all competitions and 5 losses. Meanwhile, the panic buying was continuing at Sheffield United. On deadline day, they were the joint busiest club in the Championship, signing 4 players. It included Mark McGuinness from Luton, Ben Mee, who was a free agent, Alex Matos from Chelsea, those all being permanent deals, and Chidozie Ogbene on loan from Ipswich. For those who were keeping count, over the course of the transfer window, Sheffield United signed 7 centre-backs. It included 5 in the final 2 weeks before the deadline. Does a club ever need 7 centre-backs? Selles survived the international break, but the pressure was well and truly on for their 5th league game away at Ipswich Town. Now, they started the season as the favourites for promotion, but hadn't started particularly well either. So it was a chance for Selles to get things on track. They started the game well and were arguably the better team in the first half, but completely capitulated in the second half and ended up losing 5-0. And the writing appeared to be on the wall. And that turned out to be the case. On Sunday, the 14th of September, Ruben Selles was sacked by Sheffield United after just 5 league games in charge. 113 days after taking over. Who was he replaced by? None other than Chris Wilder. Yes, that's right. 113 days after they decided he wasn't the right fit for their club, they asked him to come back. Really just topping off what a humiliating saga this was for those at the top of Sheffield United. So where did it go wrong for Ruben Selles? Well, let's make it clear, a lot of it was his fault. If you have a team which has the likes of Championship Player of the Season Gustavo Hamer, Tyrese Campbell, Callum O'Hare, Louis Barry, etc., and you managed to score just 1 goal in 5 league games, there's clearly a problem with your tactics, especially when in 2 of those 5 games you didn't manage a single shot on target. I think it's fair to ask questions about whether the players respected him as much as they did Wilder, especially after things like the embarrassing team talk on the pitch after the first game of the season. But at the same time, Selles was also facing an uphill battle. He had to win round the fans after replacing someone as popular as Chris Wilder, and if he didn't start well, it was always going to be difficult to turn things around. He also wasn't helped by Sheffield United's transfer business. The signings they made early on in the window, supposedly suggested by AI, were bizarre, and then they were left scrambling around in the final 2 weeks of the window. They signed 7 centre-backs. Why would a club need 7 centre-backs in one window? Even if they were playing 3 at the back, it would be extreme, but they weren't even doing that. However, the biggest crime of all is, despite the scattergun approach to signing players, there's still clear gaps in this squad. Vinny Souza winning the ball back in midfield was pivotal to their success last season. His replacement is a 20-year-old lad from Chelsea who was in and out of the team while on loan at relegation fighting Oxford the season before. And there's also a clear gap at right back. Last season they filled that with loan players who obviously haven't returned. They've got 22-year-old Femi Sariki, who was dropped after just 2 games. He's been replaced by Ben Godfrey, who traditionally is a centre-back. And all of that brings me on to the final question, and it's probably the biggest one of all now. Can Chris Wilder salvage this season? The answer is, I'm not sure. I think Wilder will find himself facing a lot of the issues that Selles was struggling with. I definitely don't think it's as simple as Wilder walking back in and continuing from where he left off. And that's also because a lot of water has passed under the bridge in the time that he's been gone. Let's not get it wrong, he did phenomenally well last season, but can he get things back on track after an atrocious start to the season where confidence is really low and loads of other problems with this team, and especially when he's working with a board who 4 months ago made it very clear to him that they didn't think he was the right man for the job? There's a lot of reasons to be doubtful here. So there you have it. This has been Sheffield United's summer from hell. What do you think? Were they right to get Chris Wilder back? Do you think he'll get things back on track? Let me know in the comments section below. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure you like and subscribe for more content like this. And if you are subscribed, make sure you join our new YouTube membership community by hitting the join icon next to the subscribe button. You can get all sorts of perks, including access to the second tier Discord, where you can chat to other Championship fans. Otherwise, I've been Ryan Dilks from the second tier, and a big thank you for watching.